Hello, dear learners. I welcome you to another session of the MOOC titled Rural Development in India. In this video session, we shall discuss Unit 28 of Module 8, which is titled as Role of NGOs and Civil Society in Rural Development. Dear learners, in this module, we are talking about different government structures and agencies and their role in rural development. And in this module, we shall specifically focus on non-governmental NGOs and civil society organizations and their role in rural development. Dear learners, we all know that rural development is a multidimensional process that aims to improve the quality of life and economic well-being of people living in rural areas, particularly in developing countries. It includes improvements in agriculture, infrastructure, health, education, employment, gender equality, environmental sustainability, social justice, so on and so forth. While governments play a central role in designing and implementing rural development policies, non-governmental organizations, that is NGOs, and civil society organizations have emerged as critical partners in advancing inclusive and sustainable rural development. Across the world, if we see organizations such as BRAC in Bangladesh, SEVA in India, CARE International, Oxfam, Pradhan, so on and so forth have demonstrated how grassroots engagement and community participation can transform rural communities and their lives. So in this video session, we shall try to understand what do we mean by NGOs and civil society organizations, and we shall try to discuss their roles in rural development, the strategies and approaches they adopt for rural development, their achievements so far, and the kind of challenges and confrontations they face in the process of working for rural development or in the process of working for community empowerment. So, dear learners, let us begin by trying to understand the concept of NGO and civil society. So, by non-governmental organization or NGO, we mean that these are organizations that are voluntary, non-profit organizations that operate independently from the government. They are not related or not the part of the government. They may function at the local, national, or even at international levels and are typically driven by social, developmental, environmental, or humanitarian objectives. Their motto is human welfare and social welfare. And these NGOs, they focus on specific issues such as education, health, agricultural development, women empowerment, and environmental conservation, so on and so forth. So when we say or when we use the term NGO, it is typically characterized as a voluntary organization where participation of the members are voluntary. They come together for a greater cause of social good, of elevating the conditions of people, of helping people. They're working for socio-economic development of the people and society as a whole. So it is a voluntary participation of people who come together for a larger social cause. Then they are non-profit oriented. That means they do not work for profit earning, or kind of accumulating profit is not their orientation or goal. Rather, it is more a kind of a charity or more a kind of welfare oriented organization. And it is again independent from government control. It is not related to or not a part of the government. And as we have already mentioned, that they focus on social welfare and development, and they are they have a community based approach. Their approach is like community development. So community based approach. Now, coming to civil society is actually a broader term that encompasses NGOs, community based organizations, self help groups, cooperatives, trade unions, religious organizations, and also advocacy groups. So, it is a kind of a broader, a term, broader category incorporating all these different types of organizations, and it usually represents the third sector of the society, distinct from the state, that is the government, and the market, that is the private sector. Civil society provides a platform for the citizens to actively participate and work towards collective mobilization, collective action, and it provides a platform for social accountability. In rural development, civil society acts as a bridge between rural communities and the state, amplifying the voices of the marginalized group, promoting participatory governance, so on and so forth. So, dear learners, by this you must have understood that NGOs and civil society organizations are those organizations which are not related to government directly, but they work for social welfare, they work for community development, and for greater social causes. So now let us try to understand the historical evolution of NGOs in rural development. Dear learners, if we talk about historical evolution of NGOs, the involvement of voluntary organizations in rural development can actually be traced back to the charitable and missionary activities in the 19th century. However, their structured participation in rural development or in developmental projects gained prominence after the World War II, especially after the decolonization period in Asia and Africa. In countries like India and Bangladesh, grassroots movements and Gandhian philosophies emphasized community self-reliance, cooperative farming, and rural upliftment. Over a period of time, NGOs evolved from welfare-oriented organizations to right-based and empowerment-focused organizations or institutions. For example, BRAC began as a small relief effort after the Bangladesh Liberation War and gradually grew into one of the largest NGOs in the world, focusing on microfinance, education, healthcare, and livelihood programs in rural areas. So, dear learners, these NGOs therefore has a long history of evolution. We can say that its history actually goes back to the charitable initiatives of the missionaries, in the 19th century, and over a period of time, it developed into organizations focusing on welfare, socio-economic welfare of the communities. And then from there, it also evolved into right-based institutions, fighting for rights, fighting for empowerment of the marginalized sections of the society. Now, let us try to understand the major role that played by these NGOs and civil societies in rural development. So, the first role of NGOs and civil societies in rural development is promoting participatory development. This is one of the most significant contributions of NGOs. That is, they try to promote participatory development. Unlike the top-down government programs, NGOs emphasize on community involvement in planning, implementation, and evaluation of development projects. Through participatory rural appraisal techniques, community meetings, and local committees, NGOs ensure that development interventions reflect local needs and priorities. This approach enhances ownership, sustainability, and also accountability. So, bringing the community together and, involving the community, involving the larger society in, these developmental programs, in developmental interventions, NGOs try to make these programs or interventions more participatory in its approach. Another role played by NGOs or civil society organizations is poverty alleviation and livelihood promotion. Dear learners, we all know that rural poverty remains a persistent challenge in many countries, especially the developing and underdeveloped nations. NGOs contribute to poverty alleviation through skill development and vocational training, microfinance and credit support, then promotion of self-help groups, agricultural extension services, support for small-scale enterprises, so on and so forth. For example, Seva, a renowned non-governmental organization in India, it works for empowerment of a marginalized section, particularly rural women, by organizing them into cooperatives and providing financial services, financial literacy programs, providing them market access, and also, giving them capacity building support. So, there are several organizations like Seva in India who are working towards, enhancing the skills or developing skills and providing vocational trainings among rural population or, among the marginalized section, and trying to, elevate their or trying to improve their socio-economic conditions. Then, there are several NGOs which have pioneered microfinance initiatives and have enabled millions of rural households to start income generating activities such as dairy farming, handicrafts, handlooms, poultry rearing, and small retail businesses. There are several NGOs who support small scale businesses to grow. They provide financial support, they provide capacity building trainings, they bring in or they provide or facilitate market access. So all these they do for or to provide support to small scale businesses, to small retail businesses, to household or small scale industries, so on and so forth. And by doing this, NGOs are actually trying to provide livelihood avenues or enhance livelihood avenues among the rural population and alleviate poverty. Now, another major role played by NGOs is agricultural development and food security. We all know that agriculture is the backbone of rural economies, and NGOs play a key role in promoting sustainable farming practices, disseminating improved seeds and technologies, encouraging organic farming, facilitating access to irrigation and water management, linking farmers to markets, providing them a knowledge support, so on and so forth. So, to support agricultural development and enhance or ensure greater food security, NGOs are playing a very, very significant role. Organizations like Pradhan work closely with small and marginal farmers to improve productivity, diversify crops, and enhance income stability. They work with the mission of enabling the marginalized sections, especially women, to earn a decent living and take charge of their own lives. So, and there are also some NGOs who promote climate resilient agriculture by helping farmers adapt to climate change through processes like water conservation, agroforestry, and soil management techniques, so on and so forth. So, by providing this kind of support, various infrastructural or knowledge support or providing market access, so on and so forth, by doing this, actually these NGOs are trying to empower the farmers and provide them income stability, provide them a kind of certainty of income, and enhance their socio-economic conditions. So these are another very significant contribution of the NGOs. Then, dear learners, another major role played by NGOs and civil society organizations is women empowerment and gender equality. We know that in rural areas, women often face multiple forms of discrimination, including limited access to education, land ownership, credit, lack of decision making power, so on and so forth. And these NGOs and civil society organizations have been instrumental in promoting gender equality by forming women's self-help groups, providing literacy and vocational training to them, advocating for property and inheritance rights, and supporting women's leadership in local governance. Again, here we can cite the example of Seva, where it is an example of how they are organizing women workers and bringing them together, providing them livelihood avenues by providing them capacity building training, and thereby enhancing their economic independence and social status. So like Seva, there are other organizations as well. We will see even in our own areas or in our own states, in our own villages, we will see that there are several organizations that are providing training to these rural women on skills, on financial literacy, so on and so forth, and trying to build their capacity, trying to enhance their skills so that they can earn and have a decent life. So these organizations play a major role, in women empowerment. Furthermore, we also need to understand that, by working towards capacity building of women, these NGOs and civil society organizations not only provide financial independence to women, but then this also, has a multiplier effect. For example, when they become financially independent, or when they become literate, or when they become more and more educated, gradually we will see they will have a positive outcome in terms of their health, nutrition, family education outcome for their families, for their children, so on and so forth. So these NGOs in our country and across the world are doing commendable work for actually empowerment of women, and thereby empowering the rural families, empowering the families of the marginalized sections, so on and so forth. Then another, again, major role played by NGOs and civil society organizations is in the field of healthcare and sanitation. Access to healthcare, we all know, is very, very limited in some rural areas, in remote regions, and this is often due to the lack of infrastructure or inadequate infrastructure and shortage of medical personnel. And NGOs often are seen to supplement government efforts by running mobile health clinics, conducting health awareness campaigns, providing maternal and child health support, or promoting maternal and child health programs, then supporting immunization programs, encouraging sanitation and hygiene practices, so on and so forth. There are several organizations such as Care International, Oxfam, and others that have worked in the field of health, in the field of nutrition, and providing greater health facilities, or access to health facilities to the rural population. And they have also helped the government and in implementing rural health and nutrition programs in partnership with the local communities. So NGOs, they play a critical role in providing health facilities, or in enhancing health facilities in particular regions, in the rural regions, in the remote regions. So they play a very, very significant role. Further, NGOs also play a critical role in responding to epidemics, natural disasters, and humanitarian crises in rural areas. Then, dear learners, another major role played by NGOs is in the field of education and skill development. We know that illiteracy and lack of educational institutions or infrastructures, educate number of teachers, etc., are some of the major challenges in many of the rural regions even today. And NGOs try to address these issues, or NGOs are working in the field of, or NGOs are working to provide non-formal educations. They are trying to establish non-formal education centers, supporting government schools, providing scholarships, offering digital literacy programs, then organizing vocational training for the youth, so on and so forth. And through these they are trying to facilitate education, provide support for skill development, vocational training, so on and so forth. For example, BRAC has established thousands of community-based schools in rural Bangladesh, particularly for girls and children from the disadvantaged backgrounds. And providing them education, or facilitating access to education actually enhances human capital, reduces poverty, and promotes social mobility among the rural communities. Then, in infrastructure development, also we see a significant role of the NGOs and civil society organizations. While the large scale infrastructure is typically the responsibility of the governments, NGOs often support small scale rural infrastructure projects like construction of wells and water tanks, building community centers, promoting renewable energy, supporting rural roads and connectivity initiatives, so on and so forth. By mobilizing community contributions, bringing in external funding, so on and so forth, NGOs ensure that infrastructural projects meet the local needs and are maintained sustainably. So, in these small scale infrastructure projects, NGOs contribute a lot, to provide these facilities for the rural population. So, they in this sector also they make contributions, which is very, very significant. Another major role of NGOs is advocacy and policy influence. We know that civil society organizations play a crucial role in advocacy and policy reform. They raise awareness about rural issues, they voice out the concerns of the rural population, they monitor government programs, they advocate for pro-poor policies, they promote transparency and accountability, so on and so forth. And through various campaigns and research, these NGOs and civil society organizations actually influence national and international development policies. For example, there are many NGOs which have fought for land, for example, for land rights of indigenous communities, for increased spending on rural development, increased spending on rural education. Then if suppose a development project is actually not helping the rural communities, then also they are voicing out these concerns. So by doing this, actually they are helping in rural development, in development of the rural population. So this is another major role. Then in environmental conservation also, NGOs are playing a significant role. We know that rural communities are highly dependent upon natural resources for their livelihood, for their everyday needs. And these NGOs, promote environmental sustainability for the benefit of the rural communities. They work for, for afforestation. They encourage afforestation. They promote watershed management practices. They, provide support for sustainable fisheries. And then they also have conduct campaigns and awareness programs about climate change, about environmental distractions, about how we need to protect environment, so on and so forth. And these programs and these initiatives by the NGOs help actually the communities in having a community based natural management system. And it also these role played by NGOs also ensures that environmental degradation is cut down, or we try to protect more the environment more and more for the well-being of the rural communities. So you know they are playing a significant role towards environmental conservation, which is actually needed for the well-being, for the daily life and livelihood of the rural communities. Then, dear learners, again, NGOs and civil society organizations also play an important role in during disasters. They play a significant role in disaster management and providing humanitarian assistance. And we know that rural areas are often vulnerable to floods, droughts, cyclones, and other natural disasters. And during such disasters, it is the NGOs who come forward, who mostly come forward to provide emergency relief in terms of food, shelter, and medicine. They provide for rehabilitation and reconstruction. They work for livelihood restoration. And also, they provide disaster preparedness training, awareness campaigns, so on and so forth. And by doing this, they try to help the rural communities. And the presence of these NGOs at the grassroots actually enables rapid response and effective coordination with the local authorities. And thereby, they work for, managing the disaster and, providing support to the rural communities during these disasters. So, dear learners, these are the key roles played by NGOs and civil society organizations. And through these roles, through their efforts, they try to, ensure, or they try to, work towards rural development. Now, let us try to understand the various strategies and approaches adopted by NGOs. How do they work for rural development? So firstly, they try to mobilize the community. Community mobilization is one of their key strategies. They often organize rural populations into groups such as self-help groups, farmer-producer organizations, cooperatives, so on and so forth. And by doing this, they try to strengthen the bargaining power of the rural communities, and and enhance, or strengthen their social solidarity. So bringing them together, forming a group amongst them, and mobilizing them, uh, this is one of the key strategies they adopt for rural development. Then, another major strategy or approach they adapt is capacity building. Through various training programs, NGOs work towards, enhancing the skills, knowledge, and leadership among rural people, and thereby enable them to manage their own development initiatives. Thirdly, NGOs collaborate with governments, with international agencies, private sectors, companies, and donors to leverage resources and expertise. So, through partnership, partnership with various government, private, and international agencies, NGOs work for rural development. For, they work towards, providing educational support, for infrastructure support, so on and so forth for the rural communities. Then, another approach adopted by NGOs is the right-based approach, where we see that modern NGOs are, increasingly adapting a right-based approach, and they are fighting for entitlements. They are focusing on right to education, health, food, information, so on and so forth. So they are focusing more on the rights, and advocating for the rights of the rural population, and thereby contributing to their socio-economic well-being. Then NGOs also use technology like the digital tools, mobile banking, e-learning platforms, and agricultural apps to enhance their outreach, and reach out to the rural population, and try to ensure the efficiency in rural development programs through using technology. So that is another strategy. So these are various strategies adopted by NGOs, mobilizing community, training them, enhancing their capacity through various training and other campaigns. Then, by partnering with government and other organizations, then, fighting for the rights, or voicing out for the rights of the population, and also by integrating technology in their approach and reaching out to people. By all these efforts, actually they are trying to provide support to the rural communities, and thereby work, or pave the way for their development. Dear learners, let us now try to briefly understand, what kind of achievements have the NGOs achieved in terms of rural development. So if we see that, NGOs have worked towards reduction of poverty levels in various regions of the country. They have helped formation of self-help groups. They have helped formation of, cooperatives, and providing them skill-based programs, linking these groups with markets, providing them knowledge access, thereby helping to reduce poverty among the rural population. Then NGOs have achieved, or NGOs have worked and achieved greater participation of women in decision making. So that is their another achievement. Then improved agricultural productivity, enhanced access to education and healthcare. They have strengthened community organizations and institutions, and most importantly, they have worked towards generating greater awareness about rights and entitlements among the rural population. The success stories of organizations like BRAC, Seva, Pradhan, Oxfam, so on and so forth, demonstrate the transformative potentials of civil society initiatives. Let us try to understand the challenges faced by NGOs and civil societies. The first challenge is the financial constraint. Dependence on donor funding, dependence on international organizations for funding often lead to sustainability issues and difficulty in maintaining the projects. So lack of funding and financial constraints, or lack of financial resources, and dependence on others for funding creates problems, or stands as obstacles in their programs or in their initiatives. Then there are regulatory restrictions. For example, in some countries, we see there are stringent regulations that limit the operational freedom of NGOs. So that is another problem. Then there is lack of coordination. We often see that sometimes, the functionings of the NGOs often overlap, or there is a lack of coordination with the governmental agencies or with the government structures, and what happens is that this can reduce effectiveness of the programs. So lack of coordination between the NGOs or the civil society organization and between the government agencies can reduce effectiveness. Then there is accountability concerns. Questions about transparency, governance, and misuse of funds can, undermine public trust in the NGOs. We often hear news about NGOs, misutilizing funds, or, not actually doing what they are supposed to do. And these can, lead to or result in accountability concerns. And in this way, they lose public trust. So that is another challenge. Then there is capacity limitations, For example, small NGOs may lack professional expertise and technical capacity. So that is also there. Though there are multiple NGOs, but small NGOs are unable to work or, fulfill their goals because, either they do not have the adequate financial resources, or they lack professional expertise or technical capacity, so on and so forth. And this acts as a constraint for them. And lastly, political interference is another major challenge faced by NGOs and civil society organizations. In certain contexts, NGOs face political pressure or resistance to carry forward their projects, and that is one of the major challenges. So these are the kind of challenges that the NGOs and civil society organizations face in their in their work, and to enhance in their work. And we only when they are able to overcome these constraints through with the help of the support of the state and the other organizations, international organizations, only then they can better work towards rural development. And to enhance the role of NGOs and civil society in rural development, certain measures are essential, like strengthening the partnership between government and NGOs, ensuring transparency and accountability mechanisms for these NGOs and civil society organizations, then promoting sustainable funding models, encouraging community ownership of projects, investing in capacity building and professional training, then leveraging digital technology for wider outreach, and supporting them in all ways by the state in terms of legal and policy frameworks. Through all these, actually, NGOs and civil society organizations can be supported, and they can be taken on board for ensuring better implementation of rural development programs, and for taking them on board and partnering with them, so that together government and non-governmental organizations can work for bringing development in the rural areas, and ensuring that the needs of the people in the rural areas are met, and their socio-economic conditions are improved. So government and NGOs actually should view each other as partners rather than competitors, and collaborative governance can help in maximizing development outcomes. So, dear learners, by now you must have understood what do we mean by NGOs, civil society organizations, and how or know what kind of role they play in rural development, and what are the challenges that they face in their day-to-day functioning, in their operation, so on and so forth. So we can say that NGOs and civil society organizations actually play a vital and complementary role in rural development. They along with government, they can work together and can really bring in innovation, flexibility, grassroots engagement, and people-centered approach to development initiatives. By empowering marginalized communities, promoting participatory governance, and addressing gaps in public service delivery, NGOs and civil society organizations can contribute significantly to poverty reduction, social justice, and sustainable development. And in the coming future, as we see that there is a global challenge, the whole world is facing newer issues like climate change. Rural areas are facing other issues like migration, technological disruption, so on and so forth. The role of NGOs and civil societies will become even more crucial. Dear learners, NGOs and civil society organizations can actually act as catalyst for rural transformation if they are taken on board, and they can by empowering communities, by improving access to essential services, and by promoting inclusive development, they can really work towards transforming the rural societies and bring about rural development. Their participatory approach can ensure that rural people are not just beneficiaries but also active partners in development. So, they can play a very, very significant role, and in fact, really work towards transformation of rural societies. Only thing is, NGOs and civil society organizations need to be adequately supported, taken on board, and also at the same time, their initiatives, their functionings needs to be monitored, needs to be evaluated from time to time, and in that way, through collective or effort from the NGOs and the government agencies, we can work for the betterment of the rural society and rural population as a whole. So we hope that you have understood what has been discussed in this session. Thank you.